Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101 with PJ Polacco, Just Incredible. I am your host, JP John Paz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, I am joined by the former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, the former ECW World Tag Team Champion, and the multiple-time WWF Hardcore Champion, PJ Polacco, Just Incredible. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I am doing very good. I cannot complain at all. Doing pretty good, and I feel like maybe the weather outside sucks, and it's kind of
Yeah,
killing the mood and killing the energy. But besides that, doing okay.
well, it's good. And, why bother complaining? Because nobody will listen.
Very true.
Yes.
Today on today's episode, I wanted to just discuss obviously the crux of Pro Wrestling 101, and that is tag teams and kind of get into
Yes.
tag team wrestling. And we will touch on a big tag team event or a big tag team match that happened
Yep.
over the weekend, last weekend with FTR and the Young Bucks for AEW, part of the Full Gear pay-per-view. We'll get into that later, but I just kind of chuckled when people said it's the greatest tag match of all time, greatest tag match they've ever seen.
Right.
We can get into that kind of in just one second, but when I say tag team wrestling, what's kind of the first thing that pops in your mind? Like, can they draw money? Is tag team wrestling still popular? Like, what's the kind of first thing that comes to your mind when I say tag team wrestling?
For me, tag team wrestling was always like action packed, more not high energy, but the pace was quicker because you had guys that could tag in and out, and you had fresh competitors in the ring. So, I go back to the days of the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. The pace of the matches were so exciting, and it was. It's just a whole different dynamic of storytelling. You have two guys on each side, and then of course the strategy is to cut off the ring, stay in the keep the opponents in your corner, fun stuff like that, and then of course for the heels cheating, going behind the referee's back and so forth. So it just allows for a lot of fun and a lot of different things that you can't particularly do in singles matches, or you can in some aspects with the manager, but it's just a different way of approaching matches, and it's a lot of fun. I always loved tag team matches. It was one of my favorite things to watch as a young man growing up in pro wrestling.
How come some guys kind of almost get labeled tag wrestlers, but they're almost exclusively just tag wrestlers and they can't break through as singles? What's kind of the thing holding them back from not being good at both?
That's a good question. I think that's exactly what you just said. I think tag team wrestlers, especially of the past, it was guys who were very talented, but the whether it was true or not, but the promoters and whoever was booking at the time may not have felt that they could stand alone as singles, whether it might be their size, because back in the day, size of the wrestler did matter, etc., or maybe their look lacked a little bit, so they figured if you package them as a team, it really adds marketability. So, I think that is a thing, a big thing, a big component of it. So, there's a bunch of other things, but that would be mainly the main thing for me.
I feel like some guys, like I don't know, like let's just say like the Dudley Boys, good as a team. For some
Mm,
reason, when you split them up, they're not as good as they were in team singles.
right,
But then you got like guys like the Rockers. Michaels obviously is good in singles, and
right.
Jannetty underrated as hell, great in singles as well. I feel like some guys do it, some guys don't.
Right.
Rock and Roll Express, I feel like Gibson could do more of a tag wrestler. Morton
Yep.
could do both. It's just weird. Some guys can do it, and some guys can't. I mean, it's hard to kind of really explain and put my finger on it, but there's some guys like obviously Bret Hart, great singles, great tag
Yep.
team. Jim Neidhart, more of a tag team guy. It's just
Yep.
weird the dynamic the way that happens.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, I think wrestlers are put in tag teams when they're younger. I think it helps them to kind of learn on the job. And in a way, if they put a wrestler with a veteran in a tag team situation, that's a great way for that youngster to learn the business, to learn the ropes, and to feel comfortable in the role. Where the veteran as well, you're in the ring with them, and you could learn endless amounts of stuff being in there with somebody like that to help guide you. And that could be the case. You could argue with Bret the Hitman Hart, and many others, maybe even the Rockers. But what you were saying about the Dudley Boys got over as a team But in late '90s, would they have been, at least in their ECW run and even their WWE run or F run during the Attitude Era? You would argue that Bubba Ray Dudley, who of course would be the one you would think of, could be a breakout singles guy. But fast forward maybe 5-6 years to TNA. He was a main event singles guy, so he did prove with the right marketing and push and television behind him that he could be a good singles guy. But and Devon obviously kind of lacked a little bit in that aspect.
Yeah, there's for sure, no doubt about it.
Although they did give him a couple of opportunities with the
Yeah,
preacher thing and so forth, but still, you could it's exactly what you say. Is some people are just more adapt to singles than others.
now as far as tag team wrestling itself, like the structure of it, when you're putting together a match or something, all four guys are coming together, or I mean, I guess nowadays it's completely different. They're probably speaking to each other for 8 hours in the background of the matches. But back in the day, traditional old school wrestling, is somebody actually calling it in the ring? Is there a team that's calling it in the ring? Like, how is it actually
Right.
done?
That's a good question. A lot of it would be called in the back, not necessarily though. It would be no different for me putting together a tag team match than it would be a singles match. First and foremost, and when you're in the ring, you're calling the match. You're calling the match out there, and there are ways to do it. For example, if I was in a headlock and I would shoot, I'd fight to get out of the headlock. I'd shoot my opponent off the ropes. Maybe I would drop down, or no, I'm sorry, the other way around. I would have the headlock. They would shoot me off, drop down as I'm hitting the corner or the ropes, where I am. There's the tag, blind tag. Maybe I go up and over you know what I mean? The legal guy comes in,
Yep.
sneaks in, double maneuvers. Those moves, you can even call on a fly, believe it or not. But it's a lot less. It's a lot less likely to. Those are the kind of things that are a bit more intricate, and those are the things you tend to call in the back.
I feel like with tag team wrestling, you're like you were saying before, there can be so much more action. There could be so much more spots, so much more going on. How come sometimes in wrestling, let's just say WWF, for instance, I know WCW had a problem. They just didn't like tag wrestling. They didn't want to book
Yeah.
tag wrestling. Is there like a money factor involved? Like, what's the real reason of not booking and promoting tag wrestling?
I'm not sure why. That's just another thing that I think Vince got into his head. I don't think he saw value in it, which I think is insane because to me, it was always an attraction. It was always a fun one. And especially when you only had one, tops two tag team matches on the cards, it really just brought a different kind of wrestling. Anybody that could do it, like if you got some of the best to ever do it, the Midnights and the Rock and Rolls, man, you could have a good flair match to main event, but I guarantee you walk out of there not forgetting the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express, and it'll be totally different than anything else in on the cards. So I think that's important because not only are the wrestlers extraordinary, but the things that they are able to do in tag team wrestling with the double teams, with distracting referees, with false finishes, with just all kinds of double team action. It's just a different style. And like I said, also the speed is really, the levels of speed and the quicker those matches can be is almost like a 2-to-1 on a singles match. Because again, you don't blow up, and in and out quick tags. It just helps the excitement level of those matches, and it's good for high spots as well. That's why I think the Young Bucks and the Rock and Roll Express and the Rockers, and you could even say the Midnight Express, work so well in that in that field.
Thing is, which is weird though, like if you think about WWF, they never put tag teams in the main event. It would hardly ever happen. WCW at one point in the 90s, they were kind of doing it, and depending on who was booking, seemed like tag wrestling was getting a bit of a push or whatever. But
Right.
late 90s, under kind of the Bischoff regime, not really pushing as much. Tag teams seem like they could main event. If you go back to Mid-South, like you said, Rock and Roll versus Midnight,
Yep.
blow up the territory. It was selling
Yeah.
out everywhere. It was the number one attraction. If you go to JCP, the lower B-tiered house shows of Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, were outselling Dusty and Flair. So
Sure.
Dusty and Flair go on their show
Yeah.
technically, or
Yeah.
they put them on their show to help them with their their draw. So
Yep.
it's just one of those things. It's like, why wouldn't people be more inclined to making that a main event or pushing, tag team wrestling?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, first off, I think a lot of it, and I'm not sure, it goes onto individuals, but a lot of individuals, especially individuals that were extremely talented and had a bit of a name for themselves, they weren't so apt to wanting to be into it in a tag team because on the payroll you get considerably less. Let's say I would make $1,500 for a house show at the Garden. If it was X Factor, and let's say at that, I make $1,500 for that match at the Garden, that tag team match, it was similar, same house, but let's say X Factor versus the Hardy Boys. X Factor would get the 1,500, and Jeff and I, or Pac and I, would split the 750. Do you see what I'm saying? So the
Yeah.
payoff for the match would be the same, but it would be different in that aspect.
Oh, interesting. Like, I didn't realize that. So really,
Yeah.
it can be a little bit of a money factor where you
Oh,
almost don't like
absolutely.
being involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the higher up on the card you get, and the more money's being thrown, it's like, well, I'm making half. So it does. It's like I said, it's good for people that are not on top and are trying to make a name for themselves. But sometimes it's looked at, if you're a main eventer in a singles spot and you go backwards. It seems to be almost, although it may not be as far as the company is concerned, but for you, it seems like a demotion, right? Because instead of making 1,500 a night, you're making half, and that's a big chunk of change when it becomes 6 months down the line, you're getting half your pay. If you were making $70,000-$80,000 a year, now you're making 40 to 45.
Right.
So
is
it's a big difference.
Is there constantly people that don't want to be tag wrestlers when they're put in a tag team? Have you seen guys backstage like, oh, come on, push me as a singles, or I don't want to be in a tag team? Have you seen that too?
I have seen it, yeah. I've seen it quite a bit, and I don't have any real examples off the top of my head, but some of the bigger tag teams had wanted to go singles for a very long time. I know for a fact that the Road Warriors, even though they were one of the greatest tag teams, one of the best drawing tag teams, Road Warrior Hawk thought he could, at one point, go singles, and thought that it could go in a different direction.
I feel like with
Hold
those
on
guys.
Hold on one second.
Yep.
I'm sorry if we cut it, Jill. I can't. If you want me to go somewhere else, a lot of space. I said okay. I'm just explaining to. All right, go ahead, buddy. Let's restart.
As you said, with the Road Warriors, I feel like, man, they were drawing so much money and stuff. I guess one of those things where sometimes, I guess, maybe ego or something, one partner thinks that they could do better without the other, I guess.
Yeah. And that happens quite a bit. He probably felt he was a main eventer, that he had more, let's say, personality. He was the guy that handled the promos for the most part, and or at least the most memorable one. So I think that has, ego starts to talk, and that wrestler really starts to believe that, hey, I could do this on my own. And the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, it's mostly about me, which you could argue that, Jeff Hardy was bigger than Matt Hardy. Ricky Morton was bigger than Robert Gibson, etc. But they're all great. I mean, Jeff's had a lot of good singles runs, but for some reason, man, the Hardy Boys as a unit will always mean more than either one in a singles situation. The Road Warriors, the same thing, down the line. So,
man, just think about all those great tag teams. It's just crazy. And to think that Dave Meltzer said that AEW today has the greatest tag division of all time. That kind of is one of those things where it's like, man, is he crazy? And then he goes, oh, well, all Japan had. And so you're saying, okay, maybe all Japan. But then he still was saying AEW had the best tag division. Did you hear him say that? And kind of what did you think about that? Because I thought that was a little crazy.
I didn't. I wish I had a copy of his his whatever, the Wrestling Observer. I guess he
Yep.
does it strictly online now, but I wish I had access to it because I don't read it. I just read little clips that I see all over the net from smaller publications that that report on it. But no, I don't. But yeah, I mean, Meltzer is he's obviously in bed with AEW to some capacity. I'm not saying he's on the payroll, but he has. Look, he's one of those guys that sees something and then will just praise it forever. Like in the I would say early '90s, maybe late '80s, early '90s, All Japan Wrestling was the shit. I mean, in a good way, it was some of the best wrestling on the planet. That's where really strong style kind of started to come about, and it was ridiculously good. I think it was like Masawa, Takada. I mean, those kind of guys were just brutal, brutal, brutal in there. I mean, Terry Gordy, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, um, Phil LaFon, Doug Furness. I mean, you name it. I would go up and down the line. Stan Hansen, Bam Bam Bigelow, all those guys in teams. It's crazy. So but to say that AEW is has the best tag team pool of talent. I mean, maybe right now, yeah, of course, but not in the history, and certainly not better than the past 30 years. So
He
you know,
threw that out there and was talking about how the best friends are great. And like you just like laugh. Like, okay, FDR is good. I like LAX. I think they're good, but it's just like, the Young Bucks, are
yeah,
what they are. They're pretty good at that style, obviously.
sure,
And they
sure.
can definitely, pop a rating and they can definitely pop the crowd. But best
Can they
ever.
pop a rating though? That's one thing I would love to see, and not to cut you off, but I would love to see what the breakdowns are, because that's one thing
Mm,
with AEW is we don't get the breakdowns like we do for some of the other programs, and I'd be curious to know, who really is drawing. Is Orange Cassidy drawing a rating? Is Kenny Omega? Are the Young Bucks drawing a rating? Is Cody? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I would really be curious and would love to find more about that and how I could even go about finding those numbers. Because I look online all the time, and it never gives me what I want. It just gives me a very generalized answer, not necessarily the in-depth breakdown that I would think you could access. But who
I,
knows?
I got to see if WrestleNomics has it. So it's WrestleNomics.com. Brandon
Oh, okay.
Thurston over there. I think he might have like the quarters and he might have the minute breakdown. I'm not sure if he does that
Yeah.
or
See,
not.
that would be
But
interesting.
a buddy of mine was telling me that they were breaking it down and was like, okay, Orange Cassidy doesn't draw on TV, but he draws on YouTube. So it's obviously the younger crowd, the younger demographic
Right.
liked him,
Right.
and they're getting him on YouTube. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know about TV and that audience because I remember um, they were saying that whatever when he was feuding with Jericho, he had like 3 weeks in a row where they had the
Right.
lowest quarter rating that they've ever had. So it's like
Oh,
obviously the
really?
guys, yeah. So I was like obviously the guy's not drawing well on TV, but
Huh.
I mean I don't know. And then they'll have a big battle royal. He'll win the battle royal, and they'll give him the credit
Yeah.
for the million viewers that they got for the battle
Right,
royal.
right, right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, come on, like ridiculous.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I'll check it out, see if WrestleNomics has it. But I know somebody out there does the breakdown of who's drawing and who's not. It's just with AEW, it's crazy because it's always that 800,000 viewers, no matter
Sure,
what.
yeah.
So it's like, is anybody even drawing? If they're drawing, is anybody drawing?
Well, that's the thing, and Russo and I talk about it all the time. Is Raw? I believe this week and last week hovered around 160, or not 160, 1,600,000 to 1,650,000. It's been around that ballpark. And if you add NXT and AEW on a Wednesday night, that's around the number you reach. Maybe a
Yep.
little less combined is a little less, but it's almost like, look, guys, that 1,600,000, is kind of the fans that we have out there. It really is, and because that's what WWE's pulling. They're not even pulling a 2 million, which is
Yep.
alarming for pro wrestling right now, and that's their flagship. I know SmackDown on Fox does 2 million,
Hmm.
and that's on network TV. So it's very tricky right now. You
Feels
know,
like that audience. It is what it is. AEW right, plus Dynamite equals Raw. It's almost the same exact number, pretty much.
right?
And then
Yeah,
SmackDown, you're getting a little bit extra because it's on Fox, like you
yeah,
said. So yeah, who the
yeah,
hell knows who's drawing for AEW? Who the hell
yeah.
knows? Speaking of AEW, I mentioned it off the top.
Yep.
Full Gear had Young Bucks versus FTR. I know you saw the match.
Mhm.
I saw it. I thought it was good, not great. So just wanted to kind of get your opinion on it because I read online some people calling it the greatest tag match of all time, which I just chuckled at because they say that about everything.
Yeah, it was a very good, if not great, tag team match. It was a very, very good match. I enjoyed it, but quite honestly, it was not something. I mean, it wasn't match of the year in my opinion, and it's very much like similar stuff that I've seen from them and others on Dynamite. I was gonna say Nitro. Holy shit! Um, but yeah, it's pretty much the same stuff they've given me on Dynamite, minus that on Dynamite it's about 15 minutes, and the only real difference at the pay per view was it was about a half an hour. It was like 28 minutes or something like that, and some change. So really, what they did was they went 15 minutes more, and that's it. They really didn't give me anything from a storytelling standpoint, from a move standpoint, because everybody's so worried about what's their next big move and so forth. They're selling more than they used to, which is a big deal. But yeah, I just think they have a long way to go as far as being those matches that are the greatest tag team matches of all time. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Because yes, it was very good. Yeah, it was probably the best tag team match of this year, no doubt about it. But when you start to talk about this, these high praises, no, absolutely not. It was nowhere near some of the matches that the Midnights and the Rock and Rolls had in the Crockett era in '87 and '88. Not even close, not even close.
There is a great Bret and Owen Hart, the Hart brothers, teaming up against
Uh-huh.
the Steiner brothers from WrestleFest '93, a great Coliseum tape. I used to
Oh,
love
okay.
that match. That's just like an awesome match. Steiner brothers against Sting and Luger is awesome. I don't know. So
Yep.
when people kind of put the bar saying best ever, not that maybe those are just some of my favorites, but when you
Right.
throw best ever out there, it better
Yeah.
damn be the best ever because it's just thrown out there so liberally. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I kind of laughed. I just chuckled. I was like, oh, well, Meltzer probably gave it 6 stars or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I mean, I
Overrated it.
think, yeah. Oh, but when you give a match like that, these high marks, it really sets the company and the fans up for ultimate failure. It really does because now, okay, these guys have high expectations to boot. I mean, from Jump Street, from the start, they have high expectations of the Young Bucks. All they hear is how great they are and how amazing they are. And FTR, this entity that has been unproven in the WWE and was mistreated and misused. So we're going to expect if you don't give me the kitchen sink and Jesus Christ, doing a tope off the top of the cage or whatever they call these moves nowadays. Excalibur seems to know all the names, but unless you're going to do something like that, it's just more of the same for me. I've gotten so numb to the moves where if you had this match beforehand, like let's say around the time of Double or Nothing, or that one, like one of the one with Dustin and Cody. That was one of the first pay-per-views. I think it was the first pay-per-view under the AEW banner. I could be wrong. That could have been All Out. But what I'm trying to say is if you'd have given me that match with the 30-minute match early on in the company, I wouldn't have been used to seeing that kind of stuff week in and week out. It would have been brand new to me. I just think already they've done so much. Do you know what I mean? It's like they've already lost me within a year. They got to create new stuff, and new shit because if you keep doing the same things over and over again, it really loses its shine, its sparkle. And they've gone and done it, man, because now they know straight up that they're going to kick out of everything. Nothing, the false finishes aren't going to matter, and they're notorious for doing this. They'll do like a Spanish fly off the top rope that looks fantastic, perhaps go through a table. They'll kick out at the last minute, and then a spot or two later, they'll kick out. They'll wiggle out of some finishing maneuver into a backslide 1, 2, 3. And to me that is so frustrating because you've done so many good things and you couldn't pin them. Why all of a sudden, a wrestling move? You know what I mean? Like Ross says it on commentary all the time and he can't help himself. But it's like, wrestling moves don't necessarily work when you've done some of the most spectacular moves to the floor, to the apron. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if you were able to, or weren't able to put him away with this huge move on the floor, then why should your shoulders be put down for a 3 count, 2 spots after with a roll up? No extra, you know what I mean? You weren't caught by surprise. Nothing else has hit you to cause damage or punishment to your body. So, it's just they're not thinking, unfortunately, and it's going to start to show and pay because the fans are going to just And another thing too, and I didn't. This is one thing I was a little uncertain of, so they kind of got me in a good way. I thought FTR was going to win. I honestly didn't think the Bucks were going to go over. So I'm glad I invested the 30 minutes. It was a great match. It really was a great match. The best ever, absolutely not. But I was surprised at the finish, and I enjoyed it. So at the end of the day, it was a home run for me. But best ever, I think we're grasping here. Maybe best ever this year as far as American pro wrestling. Sure, I'll give them that much, but not ever. No. But again, I shouldn't be talking like that because I'm trying. It's almost like I'm taking away from it. It was a good match. It was a good to great match.
But I feel like, when these people, including Meltzer and the pundits and all the people online, when you say best ever, you're taking away from how good the match was because
Right.
people are going to watch and go, "Come on, that
Yes.
wasn't the best ever." So they are taking away. You're like you mentioned,
Yes.
that kind of only setting themselves up for low, or the high expectation the buys to are they're setting themselves up for failure.
Yep.
As far as tag teams, as far as you and your past in ECW,
Sure.
obviously the Impact players with Lance Storm's kind of the first name that comes to mind. You mentioned X Factor for your WWF days with Sean Waltman, another great tag team. But Impact players, when that team is formed, and obviously there's a big backstory there because he helped train you and you guys came up together. Is that something you wanted to be in a tag team? Did Heyman want you to be in the tag team? Did Storm? How did that kind of tag team form?
I'm not sure at all, man. I don't remember at all. I remember it being. I remember us doing a couple of tag team matches. We were both kind of like coming out of a feud. I think I was coming out of a feud with Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer was like starting to come out of. Nope, I'm lying. It was we were doing stuff individually, and then we kind of had a match with Dreamer and Raven when Raven came back because I think Tommy was doing something with me, and I think we had the titles by then. This was really shortly after we had come together, and we almost won the titles. Like we weren't the Impact players, like you saw towards the end. If I'm not I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So then when Raven came in to team with Dreamer, and they beat us the first night Raven came in Queens. Raven came out of the crowd, DDT'd us, and like Dreamer kind of wakes up, and there's Raven handing him the tag team title. Raven just DDT'd one of us, 1, 2, 3. So that's when the Impact players really started to come about of being the Impact players, and we were already a tag title in at that point, like a reign,
Did you want to be in a tag team though? Because you were kind of on a roll as far as singles.
No, I didn't. If it was anybody else, and I didn't. I understand now, looking back at it in hindsight. But I think that Paul was pushing me as a main player, and then I don't think there was room really anywhere. Like they didn't want to bury me or feed me to anybody. But with Raven coming in and kind of helping the Raven and Dreamer storyline push forward, right? Because there are these mortal enemies, and now the tag team titles are with them. It helped. We kind of helped move their storyline along, if that makes sense. Like the storyline was not just with the Impact players chasing their titles back, because they beat us, so now we're on the hunt to regain them. It was also about Tommy Dreamer and Raven. How it wasn't even when they were going to, it's how they were going to implode, Everybody was just waiting on it. So we went into those matches with a fun dynamic of, is Raven going to be the reason that Raven and Dreamer lose the titles to the Impact players? What storyline is going to come out of this? So it really gave us a lot of time and energy and room to play in this playground. We had a ton of great possibilities and things we could have done and did.
And the interesting thing is, especially the way Heyman books, you guys could be in the main event and were in the main event a
Yes.
lot,
Yep.
even though you were a tag team. So it's the booker in the mindset, but it was also believable and good and could draw to having a tag team in the event, because you and Storm both main event guys just happened to be in a tag team together. And obviously, Dreamer and Raven at that point, main eventers. So tag teams in ECW could main event and did main event a lot.
Yeah. And it just goes to show how you could book. And not too many people do this anymore. But back then, Paul could very effortlessly, like you said, have the Impact players going after the tag titles of Tommy Dreamer and Raven, while there's something going on with Raven and Dreamer. And also there could have been something going on with me challenging for the TV title. You know what I mean? Like, it was all over the place. It's like, we still did, even though we were in a tag team. Like, I remember walking out there and having singles matches with Roadkill, and still having the ECW tag title. So it was one of those weird and wacky times where Paul just wanted everybody to wrestle everybody, and a lot of it I don't even think was this great booking strategy. It was like, well, this sounds good to me. This will be a good match, and let's do it. And then also, when I did singles matches, or Lance did singles matches, to solidify the team, we made sure that Lance would interfere and help me win, or vice versa, where I would interfere in Lance's singles match and win. So it just gave us a lot of ways to kind of play. That's where tag teams really could be useful, especially main event level tag teams. But I haven't seen anything like that in either company, and I'm surprised. It's like booking with a little bit of flavor. Something that isn't so transparent, something that has like nuances. Russo loves to use that word, nuances, and it's very true. When you book little things, sometimes little things make a huge difference. Because if you see a little Easter egg, or something that Lance might have said, or I might have said, or even one of the ladies, Dawn Marie or Francine, and then you don't think it's anything, but follow back to it, and that little saying, or that little phrase or paragraph you guys said, might come back and have something of importance that, whatever, like drop little hints. Just gives you a lot of places to play and have fun with it,
Yes, absolutely. And that was a great kind of way to kind of wrap it up and bring it back to the beginning.
I could talk forever about tag teams.
And we'll definitely come back to that. Just a great thing. But just wanted to know, who are some of your favorite tag teams of all time? And we talked about some greats, but who are some of your favorites?
My absolute favorite. I want to get this. I want to do justice by this. Oh, God, I would have to say probably one of my, if not the favorite, was the Rock and Roll Express. Definitely the Rock and Roll Express. And then the British Bulldogs, the original British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, I thought were amazing. The Rockers were great. The Midnight Express with Bobby Eaton and Sweet Stan Lane, when they were, believe it or not, the U.S. Tag Team Champions. Remember those?
Oh, yes.
Those were amazing.
Red belt.
Beautiful red tag belt. And it really, man, that really went to show how deep. Now, talk about deep. That's a deep tag team lineup, man, when you have a secondary title, So, excuse me, I thought that was cool. So I would say those teams that I had just aforementioned were probably some of my all-time favorites. Yeah, they probably were my all-time favorites. They're probably missing a team. Maybe something, that's the thing. I don't really, who would be out there today that I'm missing? I'm talking about old school that I like, but who would be considered in the last, the previous 10 years? Who would you have? That's a good question.
And
for
the only
you.
As far as the last 10 years, the only real good tag teams that come to mind are FTR, who I always liked them. I know I like their old school style, and Beer Money from Impact with
Okay,
Rude and Storm.
okay,
Kind of the
yeah.
only two, and maybe Motor City Machine Gun, just because I like the way they work, and they're kind of fast moving, and just for that, they pop the crowd, but they're smart. They work smart. They don't go crazy and on no sell stuff. So I feel like maybe those three, especially Beer Money, I love them.
Are there any big WWE tag teams
Hmm.
that really you think you know?
I don't know. I feel like maybe in the past the Usos kind of were pretty good, but not in the fringe of all time greats or anything. But I feel like
Right.
for what they were, they would put on good matches. I thought they were good. Yeah, there's really I can't think of anything WWE that they've had anybody good that's been a great team
Yeah.
in forever. I mean, we're
Yeah,
going
I
back to
can't.
like 20. We're going back to like Hardy Boys. Great. I mean, there's
Yeah.
been nobody
Yeah, I
that I
would
could
say
think
for
of.
me the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, the APA. See, that's what I mean.
APA. Yep.
You go back to the Attitude Era, right off the top. Those are legacy teams. Edge and Christian.
Hmm.
Right there, you've got four amazing legacy teams. I remember wrestling in England, and this was the infamous on the ride back was the infamous plane ride from hell. Um, the tag team match that night because it was Armageddon, I think, pay per view or Rebellion, I believe it was. It was Rebellion pay per view in England. In London, it was. This is the tag team titles. It was me and Pac, X Factor, the Dudley Boys, um, Matt and Jeff, if I hadn't mentioned them, and Edge and Christian. So you got Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, the Hardys, and X Factor. And then also a couple of months later, the Chris's came in, Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho. They had a run with the tag titles, and we had a couple
Yep.
of good matches in Canada against them, the Chris's. So I mean, just in the amount of talent that they had in that era, and that's what I think is missing is they have a lot of people that they put together on a whim at times, which is fine. But I don't see legacy tag teams as we did during that Attitude Era, man. I don't even know why. That was such a fruitful time, and the talent was so good. It's like everything they threw out there kind of worked, and the WWE during the Attitude Era had probably between 6 to 8 main event tag teams. If you really, really look at it. So, yeah, hopefully someday they will start, and I think that just goes to getting everybody over, which I see that both organizations, AEW and WWE, are having a hard time doing.
Hmm.
They hit sometimes, but I think there's a lot more misses than hits when you're talking about real stuff, like really getting over. It doesn't help that we don't have a crowd to kind of measure that, a measuring stick. But you know, we're missing guys that are really over in this business. And it shouldn't be right now. Guys like Omega, Hangman Adam Page, Cody Rhodes, etc. Those guys should be shining, and I don't feel that they are. So.
Yep, totally agree. As far as all-time greats, I got to throw out the Steiner Brothers.
Oh
Like I
yeah, I
said,
forgot. See, I forgot about the Steiner brothers, man. Another
mid,
legacy tag team.
yes, oh, absolutely. Midnight Express, of course. Road Warriors, of course.
Yep.
Arn and Tully,
I
of
was gonna
course.
say I forgot Arn and Tully. Yeah.
Yep, Arn and Tully, definitely my favorites. And then I don't know, I always loved Demolition too. I know some people have their way to say, but I was always a big fan. I always thought they were great. And of course, Hart Foundation, who we
Yeah.
mentioned before. Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are some all-time greats.
What? Another great team before they hit the WWE or WWF, the Sheepherders, aka the Bushwhackers.
Yes.
I used to love them, man. They were a scary team, dude. When they came out, from New Zealand, and they would just butcher you with those whatever foreign objects they use,
Hmm.
and they'd bloody their opponents, and they were doing hardcore matches before hardcore was a thing.
Yes.
They were doing a lot of tables, and I guess they got that style working for Carlos Colon out in Puerto Rico because there was a lot of that kind of stuff. But that was really a renaissance. It's a shame that when they got to the WWF, that they couldn't go down that road. But how WWE is. They probably made more money doing the silly bushwhacker thing than they would have if they were the other guys.
Yep.
But
That's the way it
it is
goes.
what it is. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
For sure. Now, as far as some plugs, you can follow
Yes.
me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. You can follow PJ at Instagram and Twitter at PJ Polacco. Of course, you can go to my website, tmptempire.com. You can also go to russosbrand.com and also go to patreon.com/Russo TWC to follow everything going on as far as the Vince Russo brand. And of course, the AEW review show with
Yes.
PJ Polacco. PJ, what else do you got going on? Anything going on as far as
Yes.
appearances?
Yeah, this Sunday I'm going to be at the mall in Albany, New York. I will be signing autographs during the afternoon. Actually, in-house, there is a comic book slash wrestling store, video game store inside the mall in Albany. So I will be there. I'll have all the information and anything you need to know on my Twitter page at PJ Polacco, or go on over to Facebook and check out Scott Wilder's page. That is the promoter. He'll have all kinds of information on tickets, etc., what you need. And there'll also be virtual signings happening from that location. So you can do both if you're not from the area or don't want to go because of COVID. Hit us up online. Like I said, the information will be both on my or on my Twitter page at PJ Polacco, and also Facebook, Scott Wilder. That is the promoter. And on the 22nd of November, I am flying out to Los Angeles, California for a similar event. I'll be signing autographs in person and doing virtual. That I do not have the information in front of me, but I will have that for you on, like I said, my social media pages. And last but not least, December 5th, I will be at one of the. It's open. It's been open for a while, but we're doing like grand openings every weekend, I guess, of the end of the year for Wrestling Universe. Jack Sabbath. I'm sure if you guys from the New York area know who he is. He has a wrestling store already in Queens, New York, and he opened one up very recently in Comcac, I believe. Comac, I believe, Long Island.
Yep.
So check that out. I will be there. Sabu, Roadkill, Danny Doring. So if you're in the area, check it out. It's from 1 to 3 p.m. or 1 to 4 p.m. I'm not sure. So, yeah, and that's about it, man. And if
All
you're
right,
interested
awesome.
in those appearances, go to Instagram at Wrestling Universe.
Awesome stuff. Big ECW reunion. That is pretty
Yeah.
damn cool.
Yeah,
Now,
very cool.
PJ, you got to do what you do best and take
Do
us
the
out the
favors.
only way you know how.
Absolutely. Guys, it was a pleasure coming on here and talking tag teams with you. I hope you all learned something and have had some fun with us. Now, this is the best part. Just Incredible and John Paz from Two Man Power Trip. We're not just the coolest. John Paz and Just Incredible. We're not just the best. Pro Wrestling 101 Two Man Power Trip. We are just incredible, and I just botched everything, but that's all right. Until next time, America. At least